At the time of the divorce, my husband wanted to take custody of our daughter. You're just a housewife, you have no ability to provide a better life for our daughter. Our daughter gave me a look and sweetly said to her dad, Daddy, Soren also wants to live with you more. But Talia would be unhappy if she saw that. How about I stay with Mom, and you pay more child support each month? I'm afraid Mom will starve me. Kieran angrily took our daughter downstairs. They deliberately avoided me, and I didn't want to follow and make things worse. I could only watch from the second-floor window as my ex-husband lit a cigarette in anger and said, Soren, do you really want to live with your mom? She's been supported by me at home all these years, a useless, yellow-faced woman who can't do anything. What future do you have living with her? His voice was filled with irritation. My daughter, however, looked up at me with innocent eyes, but Dad, Talia doesn't like me. So if we have a conflict, it doesn't matter if I suffer a little. Talia is carrying a child, what if it affects the little brother? They're both your children, you can't treat them unequally. My daughter's naive words made a flicker of guilt cross Kieran's face. After all, he hadn't divorced me yet, and the other woman's belly was already growing. What my daughter said so casually was like a sharp stab right into his heart. I couldn't bear it and silently returned to the sofa, tears streaming down my face. My mother-in-law watched the scene with amusement. What's there to cry about? Look at yourself, you have no job, no connections, and you're still clinging to your daughter. If you really loved her, you'd let him choose a better life. At some point, my daughter and Kieran had already gone upstairs. Kieran glanced helplessly at my mother-in-law. Mom, maybe you should say less. Then he saw my eyes red with tears and, feeling a bit reluctant, turned his head to the side. I've agreed with Soren that custody will be yours, the car and the house we're living in now will be yours too, plus I'll give you 300,000 in cash and 5,000 a month for living expenses. Talia's pregnancy is already too obvious to hide, so we need to get divorced quickly. He paused. Let's do it tomorrow. I said nothing. Although I was the one who had made up my mind to divorce, the household salary card had always been in Kieran's hands alone, so I had no idea about the division of assets. At that moment, our daughter spoke up. Dad, you should keep the car. You're a big boss at the company, how could you manage without a car? Hearing my daughter's words, my tears burst forth even more violently. They say a daughter is her father's little cotton-padded jacket. It seems that even though she's with me, her heart leans more toward her dad. And now that Talia is pregnant, having a car would definitely be more convenient. Why don't you just cash it out for Mom? That car cost over 500,000 when it was bought. Dad, just round it up and give her 600,000. Kieran hesitated for a moment, but seeing the pure look on his daughter's face, he gritted his teeth and agreed. Tomorrow at 10, remember to remind your mom not to oversleep. Kieran left with my mother-in-law. Listening to the roar of the car downstairs, I almost uncontrollably broke down in tears. 3 years of dating, 10 years of marriage. We met in college and supported each other through the most beautiful and tender years of our lives. When we got married, we promised to grow old together, never to leave or abandon each other. I never thought this journey would eventually come to an end. Mom, my clothes have a little tear. My daughter's call pulled me back from my distant thoughts. Following her gaze, I saw 2 small holes at the hem of her dress. I'll find a needle and thread to mend it for you, I said, about to rush up. But my daughter looked a bit upset. Mom, we're about to become rich soon. Can we just go to the mall and buy a couple of new outfits? She had a point. My daughter grabbed my hand and we took a taxi to a nearby mall. But instead of heading straight to the children's section, she started browsing store by store in the women's clothing area. She picked up a coat and asked me to try it on. Mom, you shouldn't always wear those dull gray colors. Bright colors like this really highlight your temperament. I took the coat and looked it over. It was indeed a very pretty light blue. But after getting married, to make housework easier, I mostly wore dark colors. Without realizing it, it had become a habit. At my daughter's suggestion, I bought the coat for myself and picked out 2 tracksuits for her. On the way back, I couldn't help but carefully say, Soren, even though your father and I are divorced, that was between our generation. You shouldn't dwell too much on those conflicts, after all, he is still your dad. Mom, I won't hate him, and I hope you won't either. People always have to face new lives, not stay stuck in the past. Under the streetlight, my daughter's shining eyes were like brilliant stars in the sky, sparkling brightly. That night I didn't sleep at all. In the morning, my daughter came to knock on the door. Mom, we should go to the Civil Affairs Bureau now. Hearing her voice outside the door, I couldn't help but laugh and cry. How did it feel like she was more eager about the divorce than I was? I opened the door. This is grown-up stuff. You better be good and go to school. My daughter looked hurt. Mom, I've already been on winter break for 3 days. I was stunned for a moment. I had been so wrapped up in my own emotions that I had paid too little attention to my daughter. I hadn't even noticed she was already on winter break. I patted my daughter's head, about to apologize. But she happily said, Mom, if you really feel guilty, why don't you take me out to play? I heard this winter is going to be very cold. We could go somewhere warm to spend it. How about that? Watching my daughter snuggle up to me and act so sweetly, I felt the gloom in my heart lift considerably, and I smiled as I agreed. We went together to the Civil Affairs Bureau, and to my surprise, Kieran had arrived before us, followed by Talia, whose face was full of hostility. We haven't even officially divorced yet, and she's already so eager to assert her claim? Good morning, Talia, my daughter said, seemingly sensing my awkwardness and taking the initiative to greet her. Talia, coming to the Civil Affairs Bureau with my dad in such cold weather, you better be careful not to let my little brother catch a cold. Kieran, look at your daughter, Talia said with a wronged expression, sticking out her pregnant belly as if asking Kieran to back her up. But the daughter's eyes immediately welled up with tears. Dad, Talia misunderstood me again. I'm worried about my little brother's health. Talia can ignore her own body in this cold weather, but what about the little brother in her belly if he gets cold? Kieran gave Talia a displeased look. She's just a kid, she can't have any bad intentions, she's only looking out for you. Talia wanted to say something else, but Kieran waved his hand impatiently. Enough, go wait in the car. They had thought that once the divorce papers were done, they could leave immediately, but now there was a 1-month cooling-off period. Kieran started the car and said, It's so cold, don't stand here in the wind trying to catch a ride. I'll take you all back. I had intended to maintain my last shred of dignity and refuse, but my daughter had already opened the car door and pushed me inside. Yeah, it's too cold. Besides, Mom hasn't officially divorced Dad yet, right? Let Dad take us home first. My feet are about to freeze. My daughter and I sat in the back seat, while Talia occupied the front passenger seat that once belonged to me. She pouted coquettishly and said, Honey, to celebrate your divorce, how about we go out for a big meal later? Kieran nodded, and Talia pretended to hesitate. Oh dear, where should we celebrate? Should we go for French cuisine or Western food? Soren leaned over at just the right moment, his big innocent eyes wide open as he said, Talia, let's go to that French place we had today. It's especially delicious. Whenever there's something to celebrate in our family, Dad always takes me and Mom out to eat. Oh right, the membership card for this store is under my mom's name. When you go, don't forget to give my mom's phone number. Seeing Talia's face as dark as the bottom of a pot in the rearview mirror, I couldn't help but twitch the corner of my mouth. My daughter kept going, Mom, how about we set our travel destination to the Maldives? Not only are there seas and coconut groves, but also lots of handsome guys with 8-pack abs who don't wear shirts. Seeing how stable Dad and Talia's relationship is, maybe you'll find a new romance in the Maldives too. Kieran glanced at me through the rearview mirror and suddenly asked, planning to travel? I really didn't want to talk much with him, so I nodded perfunctorily and pretended to look down at my phone. Kieran went on by himself, the Maldives sounds good. I have a friend who runs a hotel there, a 4-star hotel. They can let you stay for free and arrange the highest grade suite. Really? Soren happily leaned in. I knew Dad was the best. Kieran kept control of the steering wheel while taking a moment to pat Soren's head. "You're also Daddy's most beloved little darling." Seeing the two of them in this tender father-daughter moment, Talia's face darkened even more. The next day after returning home, my daughter and I packed our things to head to the Maldives. My daughter, who hadn't been on a trip for a long time, was overjoyed. She spent the entire afternoon planning the itinerary and even carefully picked out 2 sets of swimsuits for me. A 10-year-old girl is still full of childlike innocence and boundless energy when it comes to play. After breakfasting on the hotel's prepared hamburgers and steak, we dove into all kinds of water activities. By the end of the day, I was exhausted and sore all over, but my ears were filled with my daughter's laughter, leaving no room for unhappy thoughts. After returning from the Maldives, I rested for several days, sleeping deeply and clinging to the bed, completely unlike the sleepless nights I endured right after the divorce. After returning home, I originally planned to rest for a few days, but my daughter suddenly came up with a new idea. "Mom, why don't you learn to make desserts? The ones outside are expensive and taste awful." I looked at my daughter helplessly. Even though I was still immersed in sadness, I could tell she was trying different ways to help me move past the shadow of the divorce. Although I had hit a minefield when choosing a husband, at least my daughter and I were united in heart. What was there to complain about? Even though the new year was approaching, I still planned to find a job first. Kieran was quite fast. He transferred a total of $900,000 to my account. That amount sounded like a lot, but without a source of income, it was just a matter of living off savings until they ran out. After all, the various tutoring fees for my daughter add up to nearly $200,000 a year. Not to mention the daily expenses. But after being a full-time housewife for so many years, I've long been out of touch with society. I can't get into any well-known companies, so I can only tentatively talk with my daughter about whether I should first find a sales clerk job near home. The pay isn't high, but every little bit helps. My daughter thought for a moment, then said seriously, "If you want to go out to work, I definitely support you. But finding a job is like getting married, you can wait a little longer, you shouldn't settle just because you're in a hurry." She's still just a kid, but her words were so mature it made me want to laugh. I pinched her nose and said, "You little thing, why do you sound like such a little adult?" My daughter proudly lifted her head and said, "You tell me, am I right or not? Meaningless work and relationships are just drains, they're nothing but wasted time." I thought about it, and indeed, what she said made a lot of sense. Seeing the hint of softness in my expression, my daughter seized the moment. "Mom, you can put the job hunt on hold for now, but there's one thing that absolutely can't be delayed." "What is it?" I asked. "Of course, it's to stop my tutoring classes. I'm about to turn into a fool from all this studying." Under my daughter's coaxing, I reluctantly decided to temporarily suspend her piano lessons and math classes, planning to resume them during the summer break. This winter vacation, she could finally relax properly. Hearing my decision, my daughter was overjoyed and even took the initiative to complete 2 sets of English test papers. Through this experience, I began to consult her on many matters, making decisions together on everything. Gradually, our lives settled into a steady rhythm. One afternoon, I was uploading a video of the dessert I made onto a platform. My daughter came over and asked, "Mom, what are you doing?" I said, "Isn't your aunt a store review blogger? Last time, she edited the dessert I made into a video, and a lot of people liked it. I'm thinking of taking her advice and seeing if I can become a food blogger." "Mom, this is better than your job. I can help you manage the account." Honestly, I was quite tempted. Kids these days spend so much time on video apps, they really understand the tricks better than we do. My daughter has always been very smart, and I have the skills. I'm not aiming for millions of followers, just over 10,000 fans would be enough. Occasionally taking a couple of ads would help supplement our household income. Then I'll go ask my aunt for advice. If you, Mom, really become popular, you can support each other with traffic alongside my aunt. After saying this, my daughter excitedly called my sister. If I were to say what I've gained from these years as a housewife, it would be the skill of cooking in all sorts of creative ways. The desserts I make and give to relatives and friends have never failed to earn praise. With the help of my daughter and sister, my personal account gradually started gaining traffic. I not only shared the process of making desserts but also prepared some pastries, vacuum-packed and sent them to fans in nearby provinces. Bit by bit, the shop accumulated quite a few loyal customers. Coupled with the advertising fees I received each month, my monthly income in the early stages surprisingly reached around 3,000 yuan. For someone just starting out with an account, I was already very satisfied. A month had passed, and Kieran still hadn't brought up going to the Civil Affairs Bureau. I had no choice but to take the initiative to contact him to quickly dissolve our marriage. However, on the other end of the phone, Kieran stammered, "Jin, I regret it. I don't want to divorce you." My heart suddenly skipped a beat. It's a bit embarrassing to admit, but it was Kieran who first brought up the divorce, and after I pleaded with him for so long, it only made him more resolute. But in the meantime, he had wavered about not divorcing, and at that point, it was me who insisted on going through with it. At first, my reluctance to divorce was really about not wanting to let go of the years of connection we shared. But later, when I calmed down and thought it through, I realized we never really had love. Every day when he came home, all he did was complain and find fault with me, constantly calling me a useless, idle housewife with a yellowed face. If there was any reluctance, it was only about losing me as a free babysitter. After all, whenever I asked for an extra 100 yuan to buy groceries, I had to carefully watch his expression. Now, Talia's belly was growing bigger by the day, and it seemed like he couldn't wait any longer. Suddenly, he pulled this stunt over the phone, which left me feeling a bit at a loss. Only after I pressed for a reason did Kieran, on the other end of the line, feign deep affection and say, "You've always been in my heart." Strange, though I no longer felt a trace of emotion for him, at that very moment, tears almost welled up in my eyes. In the first few years after we got married, we clearly weren't like this. Back then, his career was just starting to take off. Though his business trips were ordinary, no matter which city he landed in, the first thing he did was call me to check in, and he would bring me little gifts when he came home. When exactly did things change? I couldn't say for sure. Seeing my silence over the phone, Kieran thought her heartfelt words had moved me and shamelessly continued, "Jin, can we not get a divorce? Soren is going through puberty right now, she needs a complete family." I sneered and said, "If you really cared about our daughter's feelings, you wouldn't have chosen to cheat during the marriage. The damage is done and can't be undone. Everyone has to pay the price for their choices." After hanging up, my heart still wouldn't settle. So I secretly asked a friend to find out what had been going on with Kieran lately. That's when I learned that the clothing factory Kieran ran was facing serious cash flow problems. It turned out that half a month ago, Talia had quit her initial receptionist job, claiming pregnancy made it unsuitable for her to work, and insisted on working at Kieran's factory instead. But she was just a vase with beauty, unable to understand anything and liked to boss around the veteran employees. Yet, in just a week at the factory, Talia had already targeted and pushed out several skilled craftsmen. The factory's growth was inseparable from these veteran workers, but unfortunately, Talia didn't appreciate the value of an experienced employee. She only felt that those old hands were challenging her authority, so she drove them away without even giving the basic severance pay. Years of loyal service ended in bitterness. This large batch of goods, rushed out by the remaining staff, was either stitched roughly or had flawed patterns. As a result, the client outright refused to accept the shipment and demanded compensation for the losses. This client was a new partner and didn't even give them a chance to return the goods. Kieran had to dig deep into all his savings just to barely cover the hole. What's even more troublesome is that the few veteran workers Talia fired were the ones who started the business alongside Kieran. Many longtime clients were brought in by them. Now, hearing about the situation at the factory, a lot of these old clients are unwilling to continue working with Kieran. This puts Kieran in a difficult position. His recent insistence on not wanting a divorce is mostly because he thinks Talia is simply not cut out for married life, and he doesn't want to pay the hefty costs that would come with divorcing me. Besides, to make a comeback, the capital needed is far more than just $1 million. So the house that was given to me during the divorce became the best bargaining chip. But old habits die hard. Didn't he always say his little mistress was beautiful and clever? Then let his little mistress bring those veteran workers back, and let him try to pin the blame on me. But I'm no fool. Since Kieran is determined to drag things out and refuses to divorce, I will choose to take legal action if necessary. Our daughter also delivered a crucial trump card at the right moment, evidence of Kieran's affair. It was during the last time our daughter and Sue Kieran were talking downstairs, where, guided by our daughter, Kieran personally admitted to the affair and the fact that the other woman was already pregnant. I truly didn't expect our daughter to have kept such a card up her sleeve. I sent the audio to Kieran, making it clear that I recorded the conversation myself at the door. I didn't want our daughter to get involved. Soon, Kieran showed up at the doorstep, looking utterly disappointed as he stared at me. After all, we were once husband and wife. Do you really have to make things come to this? I looked at his face, both skilled and unfamiliar, and said coldly, Kieran, don't talk to me about feelings. The one thing we have nothing to say about is feelings. In the end, the two of us still went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get our divorce certificate. Although his factory hadn't gone bankrupt, with no orders and employees on leave, plus a hefty penalty for breach of contract to pay, all these things piled up to make him look 10 years older than when we first divorced, no longer the spirited man he once was. When we parted, Kieran shamelessly pulled me into the car. A day as husband and wife is 100 days of grace, and besides, we have a daughter together. Can't I at least drive you home? The plea in his eyes was unmistakable. From what I know of Kieran, this wasn't about missing our relationship, it was about needing something from me. I was curious to see what he would say. Sitting in the passenger seat, Kieran began rubbing the steering wheel incessantly, not letting out a single fart the entire way. Just as we were about to reach home, he tentatively asked me, about the $1 million I owe you, can I pay you later? I nodded, and with a pleased look on his face, I said, but I'm not a philanthropist, and there's no sentiment between us. If you delay by a month, you'll owe interest for that month, and we'll notarize this interest and include it in the contract to prevent you from defaulting. Do you have any objections? My decisive tone caught Kieran off guard for a moment. He smiled wryly and said, Jin, you've changed so much from before. I smiled back, Kieran, we're divorced now. Don't forget, before we got married, I was also the company's second-in-command. I willingly gave up my career to return home for you, but that's no excuse for you to ignore my efforts. I don't regret the choice I made with you back then, but I will never go back. After divorcing Kieran, I devoted more of my energy to managing my account. My daughter even enlisted her classmates to help promote it. Because the account was gaining good traffic, it received support from the platform, and by the third month, I already had 50,000 followers. For this, I specifically hired a college student to edit videos. They were creative and lively, making the small titles and video thumbnails far more appealing than anything I could design myself. As my followers grew rapidly, my workload became increasingly busy. Sometimes I had to create at least 2 or 3 different new desserts a day. I often attended dessert training institutions to learn and took fans' suggestions into account. While things were gradually taking off on my side, Kieran's life was a miserable sight. To get Talia to go back and apologize, he deprived her of many benefits from Soren. But Talia, with her spoiled nature, after saying just a couple of soft words and getting snapped back at, recklessly caused a scene in someone else's home and even broke the old master's TV. In the end, Kieran picked Talia up from the police station and compensated the old master for the TV at full price. As they stepped out of the police station, Talia kept cursing non-stop, which made Kieran both angry and disgusted. He turned and slapped her, scolding, "You reckless fool, why don't you shut up already?" After the incident at the factory, seeing that she had to pay someone back, Talia grabbed some valuables and ran off. Kieran found out, chased after her, and beat her severely, which ended up injuring the baby in her womb. When my daughter heard the news, she excitedly dragged me out for a big feast to celebrate. She said, "This is karma." I nodded and took her to a lavish buffet. Those who betray trust won't even receive a shred of mercy from heaven. What's giving me a headache is that ever since Kieran broke up with Talia, he's been like a stubborn leech clinging to me. He keeps sending fresh flowers to the house, and even bought me a gold ring on my birthday. It's truly laughable. Once I looked down on that yellow-faced woman who wouldn't even let me buy her a single piece of clothing. But after the divorce, he suddenly turned romantic, showering me with affection just like when we first fell in love. My daughter also sensed something was off and tentatively asked, "Mom, are you going to get back together with Dad?" I stared listlessly at the gold ring in my hand. I remember before Kieran and I divorced, I subtly hinted to him that I wanted a ring. At that time, gold prices weren't expensive, a ring weighing about 2 grams cost just over 1,000 yuan. Yet he angrily scolded me, saying I only knew how to spend money at home without earning any, and accused me of not understanding how hard things were for him outside. It was ridiculous that after so many years of marriage, I didn't even have a single piece of jewelry worth showing off. The money saved for the bride price was all used by me to support Kieran's startup within the first year of marriage. Later on, he turned around and bought Talia bigger and more expensive gold earrings. Sometimes, it's not that men are unwilling to spend money, it's just that deep down, they feel you don't deserve it. I glanced at my daughter, her eyes full of innocence, and in my heart, I longed to give her a complete family. Soren, to you, Kieran is a good father, but to me, he is not a good husband. I cannot take away your rights and duties as a child, nor your filial piety, but I also hope you will support your mother's decision not to remarry. When I say this, I may not have fully considered your need for a complete family. As I spoke, my emotions began to sink. At that moment, my daughter gently embraced me. "Mom, if I only think of myself and not of you, that would be truly selfish. What I've learned tells me that a woman is first and foremost herself, and only then a mother and a wife." Tears slipped down my cheeks uncontrollably. I hadn't realized that my little daughter carried such clear and open wisdom within her small frame. With my daughter's support, I finally mustered the courage to have a clear talk with Kieran. I arranged to meet him at a nearby restaurant. I hadn't planned on bringing my daughter along, because I had already made up my mind that if communication with Kieran proved impossible, I wouldn't hesitate to cut ties with him. I really didn't want my daughter to witness such a scene. But she insisted on coming with me. When we arrived at the restaurant, Kieran had been waiting at the table for quite some time, with carefully selected roses placed in front of him. The gold ring on his hand, a symbol of his status, had been replaced by the couple's rings we bought when we first started dating. Seeing me walk in with my daughter, a look of excitement flashed in his eyes. Before he could even greet us and invite us to sit, my daughter said with a mischievous grin, "Dad, Talia is really terrible at taking care of people. How come you've changed so much in such a short time since the divorce? You look like you've aged 10 years. It seems that young and beautiful women are like roses with thorns, not everyone can have them." Kieran's smile froze on his face, looking particularly awkward. Throughout the entire meal, Kieran kept watching me and my daughter interact closely, making himself feel like an out-of-place outsider. Several times, Kieran tried to jump into the conversation between me and my daughter, but each time, my daughter brushed him off with a casual retort. Kieran's tears finally betrayed her and fell uncontrollably, as she kept murmuring regrets and wishes to turn back time. Her daughter, expressionless, handed her a piece of paper. "Dad, no one stays in the same place waiting for you forever." I sighed, about to use this moment to clear things up with Kieran, when suddenly a disheveled figure dashed around the corner of the restaurant. Without hesitation, she snatched a hot dish from a waiter's hands and hurled it straight at me. I screamed, unable to dodge in time, but my daughter was quick. She pulled a coat from behind her and shielded me. I was unharmed, but my daughter's hands were burned bright red, and seeing that made my heart ache deeply. Only then did I realize the wild-haired woman was Talia. Kieran had pulled her away, but she was still hysterically cursing, "You shameless vixen. We're already divorced, so why do you keep clinging to my man?" These remarks immediately attracted a crowd of onlookers, and some busybodies even took out their phones to record. Kieran held Talia with one hand to keep her from acting out, while impatiently rubbing his forehead with the other. How many times do I have to tell you? It's over between us. Who would want to live with a woman like you who only knows how to cause trouble? The child is gone, and I've already compensated you. Besides, you're a homewrecker. What right do you have to call others temptresses? Talia looked at Kieran with tear-filled eyes. Do you think money can just settle this? I'm a woman who can't have children. Who do you expect me to marry in the future? I don't care. You have to take responsibility for the rest of my life. My daughter impatiently interrupted her. That's your business, it has nothing to do with my mom. Please don't drag her into this. Mom, let's go. They brought this on themselves, we shouldn't get involved in their mess. As my daughter pulled me, ready to turn and leave, I saw Talia pick up a broken shard of porcelain from the ground, her face twisted with rage as she lunged at my daughter. Why can't I have children but you can? You even have a daughter. I want you to suffer like I do. Instinctively, I stepped in front of my daughter, the shard grazing me. Within seconds, my vision began to blur. Before I closed my eyes, I thought I heard my daughter's hysterical scream and saw Talia's frantic figure. I don't remember how long I slept, only waking to see my daughter's eyes red and swollen. When she saw I was awake, the weight she'd been carrying finally lifted. Fortunately, at the time, Talia had only casually picked up a piece of broken porcelain from the ground, which wasn't particularly sharp. She didn't strike with full force, and the shard only grazed my collarbone without touching the artery in my neck. But a scar was inevitable. My daughter gritted her teeth and vowed to put Talia in jail to teach her a lesson. However, after this incident, I truly didn't want any further involvement with Kieran. The man who talked about remarrying me didn't even stand up for me in a critical moment, not even with our daughter's support. How could I entrust the rest of my life to such a man? Only Talia could treat him like a treasure. I told Kieran to transfer the remaining money to me. I didn't want any so-called interest. What good is money if you don't have your life? At first, Kieran said he didn't want to fight, but when he saw I was holding the evidence of his affair, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and scrape together that small amount of money, just to avoid affecting future business. I handled the transfer of my daughter's school enrollment, sold our current house, and moved with her to another city. After all, staying here any longer was simply too unsafe. Before I moved, Talia came knocking again. I didn't pursue legal action against her. If a woman like that ends up with nothing after 10 years, who knows what she might do to me and my daughter. You can't drive a dog into a dead-end alley, I've always understood that. Before Talia could speak, my daughter cut in ahead of her. Talia, my mom didn't press criminal charges because she truly understands how hard it is for you as a woman. But one must know right from wrong, shouldn't they? What does my mom have to do with how you ended up here? She's just a pitiful woman whose husband cheated on her. She cut ties with my dad long ago. It was clearly my dad who was fickle and indecisive. Since you could cheat on my dad while still married to him, you should know what kind of scum he is. Talia left in a daze. My daughter and I exchanged a glance and hastened the moving process. The story between Kieran and me was over. From now on, it would be just my daughter and me embracing the beautiful life that belongs to us. As for Talia and Kieran, this pair of resentful lovers were only just beginning their saga. I'm sure their future life will be chaotic, with Talia clinging to Kieran relentlessly. He will never be able to start a new relationship. Never underestimate the boldness of a woman who has nothing at all. But what does that have to do with me and my daughter? This new year, I plan to take my daughter abroad to experience the thrill of living lavishly with money in hand.